I love the dramatic countdown this thing does. Yes. Hi. Hello, Patrick Freeman, writer
Hello.
of Black Dahlia. So happy you could take the time to join me for what is most likely going to be a very exhausting interview. Uh, uh,
Maybe I should have prepped. Had you send me the questions in advance. I don't know.
I'll try and keep it light. Easy ballpark question to begin with. I've been saying Dahlia all this time, but all the actors in the game say Dahlia, and it didn't really hit me until I interviewed the actors that they also said Dahlia. Is it Dahlia or my first language is not English, so is it Dahlia or Dahlia?
That is an excellent question. I would say Dahlia, but it might be a regional thing.
Okay,
An accent.
perhaps.
Dahlia, and quite frankly, also, like eh, there are differences in pronunciations if you are in the UK versus in the US, and so it could just entirely be, we're all from the Pittsburgh area, and that just could be our Pittsburgh accent.
Okay, because I had to look up what a dahlia or dahlia is. Apparently, it's a flower that grows in Central America. So, some people on my Discord was like, "Yeah, it's probably a regional thing. You're Danish. It's all Vikings and stuff in that game. It's probably you're probably right because it's Vikings." And I looked it up. It's like, no, you couldn't be further from Scandinavia than a dahlia. But all right, so
And that was her, Elizabeth Short's nickname back in the 40s. So
yes. My wife is really into true crime and stuff, and like Elizabeth Short, the mystery of Elizabeth Short, is like the OG of true crime, unsolved mysteries. So that was
yeah,
the one thing that I knew going into this. It was it's probably gonna have something to do with her, and she's in it for about
indeed.
10 minutes
Indeed, she is.
until bits of her starts flying off. Yeah, so let's start way back at the beginning, the genesis. What was your start in the game dev business, and how did you wind up at Take Two?
Well, so I had recently earned my Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, and I was back home in the Pittsburgh area. Was working, for an agency that sort of was tangentially, creative, but was looking for something a little more fulfilling. And was an avid gamer, had been for a number of years. And certainly everything from the old LucasArts Day of the Tentacle style adventure games, um, uh, some of the D&D games at the time, Heroes of Might and Magic strategy games. Very, very avid PC gamer, and I saw this advertisement for a writer for the development arm in Latrobe, Pennsylvania for Take Two, and jumped at it. And I remember playing Ripper. I'm sure Ripper was on my radar at the time before I saw the job advertisement, but did some serious homework playing through that game to sort of prep me for the interview. And I guess the team, the writer of Ripper moved on to greener pastures, and they were looking for someone. And I had the creative writing bona fides, but also, was also a gamer. And I think they appreciated both of those aspects. So, yeah, I started there, and I believe it was spring of 1996. Black Dahlia was already in the works, but it was, really in the early stages of development on the project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ripper is one of those games that you either love it or hate it, or you mystery science theater it. And I s- and I s-
Or
and you
all of
say,
the above.
I mean, it's a good game, but it has a difficulty curve that you would not believe. And so when you say you played through it, did you have like one eye on the
Oh,
walkthrough?
I am sure I did. I am sure I did. For a variety of reasons. One, because those puzzles and the puzzles in Black Dahlia, as you have mentioned in other interviews, are incredibly difficult. And the ones in Ripper I found also to be incredibly difficult. And certainly doing interview prep for a job, I wanted to not get hung up for hours and hours trying to solve a puzzle. So I'm sure I had a walkthrough of some sort as I
Yeah.
was going through the game.
Yeah, there's one of those early puzzles where you have to arrange crystals, and everyone gives up at that point. It's just like, how the hell am I supposed to? Anyway, let's keep moving. The genesis of Black Dahlia story. You said it was already in sort of pre-development ish. How much
It,
input did you have on the story?
it was. So, like, I think the basic concept was already there when I was brought in. And I think, Ripper was successful and obviously, had that true crime kind of milieu to it. And so they were looking to do another game in that sort of true crime, unsolved mysteries kind of genre. And I'm not sure which happened first, whether it was the Torso Killer or the Black Dahlia. Sparked, the sort of like story of the game. But I do remember, when I was brought in, one of the first things I did was I read a lot of background information on both the unsolved Elizabeth Short murder, but as well as the torso killings in Cleveland. And, I think it's pretty wild speculation, but I think in one of those books there was, the theory that maybe the individual in Cleveland moved to Los Angeles, and like there were enough similarities, to make a very tenuous connection.
Yeah.
And I think at some point someone saw that connection in that book, and it was like, okay, we've got our thread from Cleveland through the war through to Los Angeles.
Nice. So you went in with an existing idea already present, and then started fleshing out the little bits based on. I mean, someone at the Take-Two offices must have gone, we would like to do a game that has to do with either the Torso Killer or the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short. And here, have that. Go fight. Go figure out a plot.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's how it worked. And whose original idea, to develop a game based on, either the Cleveland killings, the Elizabeth Short killing, or both. I'm not sure. Perhaps someone like Steve Glastetter, our lead designer, may be able to give you some insight into that. But when I was brought in, it was very early in the development process, and we had the concept, we had the sort of like the overall arc of the story, but there was a lot of daily design team meetings to sort of flesh out the plot, the settings, the puzzles,
Yeah.
all of that. And
Yeah.
that was a big collaborative effort that, took months to work out.
I would imagine. I mean, the credits list in the manual has like a million designers. I think there's like 6 or 7 of them. I should have counted before I started the interview. But there's a lot of designers on this. Was there any overlap with designers from Ripper, or was this like a new team?
I believe so, yes. I'm not entirely sure how many were directly involved in Ripper. I believe probably the whole team worked on it. But in terms of lead design capacity, I'm not sure. I believe Steve Glastetter was involved in that, but not in the lead design capacity. And I think he was promoted for Dahlia to take on the lead design responsibilities. But we had a lead programmer in every meeting. We had key art. We had project managers. We had Q&A testers. And myself. And so, yeah, I think it was somewhere like 6 to 8 different people meeting pretty much daily. My recollection of the time is, we would meet every morning and we would work out, segments of the game. And then in the afternoon, I would either be deep into research or deep into actually writing the dialogue.
Nice. So as for puzzle design and such, was that split evenly among you, or did someone just have all the good puzzle ideas? And
Yeah, so I would credit, let's say credit, most of the puzzle design to a few key people, and Steve Glastetter as the lead designer being one of them, and then Greg Brown, who's the lead programmer on the game. And I think the two of them really excelled at and enjoyed the sort of, I believe you described it as logic puzzles.
Yes.
And that was their forte and their strength. And yeah, some of them were truly diabolical and passed over my head at the time we were talking about it, at the time I was witnessing it in development, and then trying to play it afterwards. So,
Was there any like conscious decision from them to focus on logic puzzles versus your standard Day of the Tentacle ish? It was just, this is what
no,
we're good at.
I just think that was more their wheelhouse. I don't think they were necessarily, looking to lean one way or the other. I just think, that was naturally the type of puzzles that they gravitated to. And
Right.
so that was the
Right.
emphasis.
Did you contribute any puzzle design, or was your main forte, so to speak, the story and the
I'm
writing?
sure I contributed in terms of input. Oh, hey, the stained glass puzzle could be X, Y, or Z, or the phone number puzzles. We could use this code. But I don't remember contributing like a specific, even puzzle concept, like, oh, it should be this, and then the team was like, oh yeah, all right. So
Okay.
it was more like feedback and brainstorming kind of, when talking about it. I was there in all the meetings, so like none of it was, I think even when we're talking about the leads, none of it was, truly independent. It was really a collaborative effort. And then, in the morning and then in the afternoon, you'd sort of go off to your own offices. And if you were, the art, you'd be developing the 3D, rooms and hallways and all of that. If you were doing the compositing, you'd be setting that up. If you were doing the programming, you'd do whatever programming, involved with, manipulating the stained glass puzzles or the other puzzles in the game.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you were doing compositing, you'd be sweating bullets. God.
Yeah. Poor Henry Barrasso and Lance Laspina. We had two primary compositors, and they had an incredible amount of work to do for sure.
Yeah, but it did pay off. I will say, and this is not just because we're doing Black Dahlia interviews. The FMV compositing and effects and all that stuff in Black Dahlia is probably the best I've seen. Up there with like Wing Commander 4, which had real sets. So that's a benchmark. So, but FMV games were sort of in their twilight years around 1998 when the game was released. What made you guys go still with FMV in the vein of Ripper instead of 3D or traditional?
Well, what I would say is at the time we were creating the game, it was not yet in the twilight, and that it peaked with Black Dahlia and then rapidly dropped off.
I describe it as like the last truly good FMV game, and then everything else just, yeah, like you said, dropped off.
Yeah, I think probably towards the end of the development cycle, we all realized that gaming was starting to move in a different direction. But a game like that's probably close to a 2-year development cycle, and so when we started into it, certainly that wasn't signs yet that that the genre was getting, I don't even want to say passe. It was just like it is a huge expensive undertaking. That was 6-8 weeks of filming on a blue screen with live actors. The development of a game like that is quite an enormous undertaking. And I think the genre, I think that started to turn into the heyday of games like Doom and Unreal and things like that, the first-person shooter genre, which I think maybe, had, I'm sure, their own technical sort of limitations or issues. You need a team to do those sorts of things, but it was, I think, perhaps an easier genre to create at the time, and didn't have like the overhead that a large scale FMV game like Black Dahlia had.
Mm. Yeah. I had some sort of comment linked to that one, and now it completely fell out of my mind. Maybe it'll come back. So let's talk about the script. It was absolutely massive, especially for an FMV game. Was there ever any pressure to like cut it down? Because it takes place over like almost half a decade of a period.
Yeah, yeah. There's a big story arc, a big character arc. That design was there from the get go. The script, which was probably somewhere 400 to 450 pages, was massive. Certainly, like the largest film production in the Pittsburgh area that year. And yeah, no, it was enormous, but no, there was no pressure to cut it down. It was more of a question of how can we squeeze this all in to like
Yes.
an 8-week shoot. I think I mentioned in an email to you, there was only one sequence that I can remember that we talked about doing, but never ended up moving forward with it. And that was a brief interlude in the just post World War II European sort of Indiana Jones segment of the game, where we would have an actual shootout with Nazis. So, um, but it would have been interesting, but I think it would have felt like a different game. And so, and that would have required a lot of resources of just, from a programming and art standpoint. So that was the one thing that I think we had kicked around quite a bit and um, ended up eventually not moving forward with.
Yeah, and you talked about it in the email as like your proper texture mapped full 3D environment style shooter, like a Doom Quake ish type thing.
Ish, yeah.
Because in Ripper there had been a number of rail shooter segments. Like you basically it's just an FMV and some crosshairs, and then you shoot some stuff, Rebel Assault type stuff. There is kind of one in Black Dahlia as
There's
well.
that one segment, yeah.
There's one. It's not really much of a rail shooter, but it is. You're on a timer and you have to shoot the little Nazi in the warehouse. Little Nazi. Oh, he's so tiny. Yeah, yeah. That would have been fun. Maybe cut the maze down a bit. And no, I'm just kidding. Oh yeah,
I think it was just that would have required a development of like a completely different set
yeah.
of assets, both from a programming standpoint and from an art 3D artist standpoint, and it just wasn't feasible.
It would also come out of left field, really.
Yeah, yeah.
All of a sudden, it's now a death match. I remember what I was going to say earlier, which was that one of the contributing factors, from an outside standpoint at least, was that by the end of the 90s, there was so much FMV slop coming out. Your Sega CD titles and some adventure games that used FMV more as like, we want to shoot a movie and we'll have you click around the screen a few times. And then there's another long unskippable. So FMV games sort of dug their own grave, so to speak, which is kind of a shame because there are some examples of really good ones. And unfortunately, a lot of examples of really terrible ones.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a question, more of an observation.
And yes, very true.
So, what was the reaction from the rest of the company after you've shot a 450-page script and all the stuff is programmed and you look at all the data and you go, this won't fit on 6 CDs like Ripper. It won't fit on 7 CDs like Phantasmagoria. We're going to ship this on 8 goddamn CDs.
I'm sure there were discussions. I wish I could remember anything specific about it. That was probably, I'm going to guess, the president of our company there in the Latrobe office probably had some conversations with the people in the New York office, which was the business arm of things. And so I wasn't privy to them, but I'm sure they were had.
It is the biggest. I cannot recall any other game that takes up 8 CDs. 7, I thought, was king, but Black Dahlia stole that. Oh yeah, and Darren Elliger actually did mention that Take-Two and New York weren't entirely on board with the whole thing. He, in sort of vague terms, said that what, they didn't seem, but they approved a massive budget. So,
Yeah.
how did that? Well, do you recall any pushback from the main branch, and how did they approve the budget in the first place then?
Yeah. So again, that was probably conversations between the president of our office and then the team in New York. And I don't remember like having any like serious pushback about the budget. It was more, I think, towards the end of the development process when um, I think the writing was on the wall, and there was. I remember a lot of excitement from the New York office talking about this little game that I'd never heard of at the time called Grand Theft Auto. Who
Oh,
knew? And I think that was either number one or number two. I forget, but it was like before it was like the big name in the genre that it is now. But there was, a real buzz over games like that, and that was coming at either the tail end when we were launching the game, or it was just recently post launch of the game. That was getting the hype and the buzz out of the business office in New York and ours. I think they probably at that time had already decided to, cut bait on our team in Latrobe.
yeah. Oh, those damn British people and their autos and their thefting of them. Yeah. Well, as for the FMV production, I've got categories in my
Yeah.
list here because I don't want to overwhelm you. But the FMV production, it's a very small bit. Were you on set when
Yes.
this thing was filmed? Yes,
Yeah.
like all the time.
Every day. Every day. The only time I was not on set was the segment that they filmed with Dennis Hopper, which was at the LA studios. I did not um, make the short list for the people flying to the LA set. That was a very small team. Maybe that's where the budgeting comes in. They didn't send the whole team for that. I believe it was probably Steve Glastetter, our director Eric,
Oh, he has to be there.
Aaron, and
Yeah.
maybe a small number of other people. But it was a very small team and a very quick shoot. I think that was just like maybe 2 or 3 days tops, if not a single day in LA.
Yeah. And you have a physical cameo in the game. So
I
you
do.
you definitely were on set that day in a nice big furry costume.
Yes.
Um, how did you, why? How did you sneak on in front of the camera like that?
So originally in the script, I was really, I immersed myself in a lot of, and I have a love for a lot of the movies of, the 1930s, 40s, and into early 50s, whether it's sort of like the Maltese Falcon and, Sam Spade, the Raymond Chandler sort of era, the film noir era, but also like some of the early sort of sci-fi and monster movies of the late 40s and 50s. And so I'm sure that was my idea that the film set should be originally the Crabmen from Planet X. And I wrote that, and I wrote it, and one of the things that I begged for was that I wanted to be the Crabman. It was going to be just a cameo. No one would ever see me. I'd have a big crab head on me, and I'd just be, one of the extras in the background. Turns out we could not find a large crab costume anywhere, so it morphed into the Monster Men from Planet X. So I got that, and the sort of the set was in the script. The background was in the script, but the cameo was not. So that was something we decided day before, something like that. And we wrote a quick line for me, and you can probably see why. They didn't give me more lines.
I
I
thought you
brought an
did great.
actor. We did 2 takes. I wrote my line on set that morning. We found a little time in the schedule to work it in. And we did 2 takes. And the first take, the costume was so darn big that I had no peripheral vision. And so Darren, his character, Jim Pearson, steps up behind me, and that's my cue to hit it. But I couldn't see him at all. So the first take was ruined because I missed my cue. And then the second scene, what we decided, since I couldn't see him, was that he was actually going to bump into me. And that was going to be my cue to leave. And so that worked just perfectly, but I did stumble a little bit on my dialogue, and then we just had to move on. So
Mm,
I made
yeah,
it into the game, but if we could have had a third take, I would have nailed it.
absolutely. We will make that happen. We will put you and Darren and her. I forget her name. I'm sorry.
Amy
In
Dahmer is the name
Amy
of the
Dahmer.
actress.
That's Darren even mentioned it. That's yeah. I'm bad with names. I'm sorry. We will recreate that scene. We will make it happen. Um, I was beautiful. Were there any like unscripted moments that happened during the filming that were just too good to not keep in?
Maybe in terms of like some Easter eggs and stuff like that. I know we had planned out a number of the Easter eggs um, in advance, or again, like morning of. I don't think there was a lot of just improvised lines, in large part because we were on just such a tight shooting schedule. There wasn't a lot of room for just exploring, different lines and line readings and so forth. And, one of the, for such a big production, having Darren in particular, but really, all the actors up and down the line, just real professionals. And Darren, he was in every single scene, 400 some pages. The guy came in every morning, just prepared, knew everything forward and back, and nailed it. And how he was able to do that, I do not know to this day.
Oh,
But
that is yeah. He had his work cut out for him. He seemed pretty pleased with it though when I spoke to him.
absolutely, absolutely. And I was very happy to hear, in his interview, him talking about actually playing it and being a bit of a gamer himself. I don't know if I knew it at the time and just forgot, or yeah, all of us did. Come on. um, but the fact that he did take the time to actually play it,
Yeah.
and hopefully, in David's case, with Agent Winslow, you'll be able to send him, a link to some of the cut scenes that you did put together, just so he can actually see his performance finally.
Oh, he did. He did apparently look through it.
Nice.
And we had a great chat about the black and white scene where he kicks Al King around, and
Yes.
the whole
Yes, he enjoyed that a little too much, both at the time we filmed it and it seems like still today.
an actor's actor, really.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah, he's a
wars?
great guy.
Oh, he's fantastic. I love the little hand coming up and the meat cleaver
Mhm.
going down. So what were some of your like favorite performances from actors besides Darren and David?
Um,
Yourself?
yeah, myself. I really carried it, quite frankly.
Absolutely. It's those little moments. It should have been Patrick, Dennis Hopper, Terry Garr, Darren O'Brien.
Yeah. It's funny. Oh gosh, I hope I'm getting her name right. Colette, I believe, who played Helen Strauss.
Oh
And
yeah.
she had like such an obvious thing for, the Jim Pearson character. And the way she played that, I just thought was just so delightful. Obviously at the time I enjoyed it as well, but that was well over 25 years ago now that we were filming that. And I just forgotten that performance. And so when I was rewatching the FMV sequences, that one was one of the ones that really stood out for me.
I was
Um,
dead sure she was gonna like come back in a bigger way because she absolutely cannot breathe around Pearson. Like she like picks a sandwich out of her
mhm.
teeth and sideways glances him, and I was dead sure she was going to come back in a big way.
Yeah, and I'm sure like we wrote it into the script that she was fawning all over him, but I thought she really, really nailed the performance, and
Oh yeah.
looking back over it, definitely that was like one of the sequences that I really enjoyed. rewatching. And another one that I enjoyed that I'd forgotten all about, and it's such a bit part, but there's a scene where Darren is going into the mines, or Jim Pearson is going into the mines. They've uncovered a bunker, and there's a guy, I think his name was Benny, and he had this line about putting the patter in Patterson.
Yeah, yeah.
Patterson, New Jersey, that is. And just the way that he delivered it, I really enjoyed as well.
Oh, it's
And that was one, just total bit part, but one that I, you know, rewatching all these sequences that I'd forgotten, really enjoyed re-experiencing that.
oh, I love that one. I love Pearson's line as well. Do you ever come up for air, kid?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, well, we can't really stall anymore. We have to get into some plot questions. I promise I'll try to take it gently on you, but again, I was 18 years old when I played this for the first time. Didn't understand a word of what was going on, and now I've recently replayed it again, and with those so-called analytical skills of mine, where if there's something I don't understand, there must be something wrong with it and not me. I compiled a list of questions of things I just don't understand, and hopefully you can clear up some of my obvious shortcomings of attention.
Well, to start with, I will say, Trolls, that I do not know why Detective Mary Lowe is making kissy lips at you. So
That I think was an artistic choice, but he has very kissable lips. but other than that, the torso killing. With my limited research, reading a bit about the torso killings themselves, they seem to have started from 1934 to 1938. There were, what was it, 6 official killings, and then the case sort of went cold. But Black Dahlia starts in 1941, which is 38, 39, 40, 41, 3 years after the case technically stopped being ongoing. So was this done to sort of coincide the timeline with other things like bombing of Pearl Harbor in
yeah,
1941 and stuff? Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we, were a little loosey goosey with some of the stuff going on with the torso killings in Cleveland, especially in the timeline. We knew that we wanted sort of Act One to end with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and then the entering into the World War II from the U.S. side of things. And so yeah, we compressed and moved and altered. The part about Elliot Ness being there, that part is actually true though. So
Yeah, he did investigate the thing, and Detective Merlo also a real person.
yeah.
We still do not know if the actual person had kissy lips or not, but I'm sure. Now he really
Sadly, that is lost to time.
I love that actor's performance as well, where he just
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. There's one scene where he gets really aggravated and just pounds the shit out of what I imagined was just a blue covered cardboard box or something, and
probably.
he's
Yeah.
because he's slamming his desk with his finger. He's so good. Okay, this is where it gets really hard for me to wrap my head around. So the Dahlia itself, the gem, apparently is stuck to the end of Dr. Eisenstadt's cane throughout most of the first part of the game before we even know what the hell this thing is. And then right at the end, the Dahlia is missing from his cane, and Pearson gets all wide-eyed about that. How did it end up on his cane in the first place? Where did he get it? What is Eisenstadt's deal?
Super glue?
You know what I mean?
I do. I'm sorry. So Eisenstadt, my recollection is that he is the leader of this sort of group in Cleveland that has this sort of affinity for the supernatural, but isn't necessarily tied to the Third Reich in Nazi Germany. So they're sort of splinter groups, different agendas, and so forth.
The Brotherhood of Thule
Yes,
business. Yeah.
exactly,
Meeting in
exactly.
the back room, smoking some cigars, chanting in Latin, that sort of stuff.
Yes, exactly, as one does. And how he came about it originally, I think we tried to deliberately not provide an answer to that, provide that air of mystery that this was this secret organization that has existed for centuries, and maybe for a period of time had fallen out of fashion, fallen on hard times, but we're looking to return to glory.
Hmm. Well,
And so that was Eisenstadt's motivation. I remember we did have a very specific, I don't remember the logic of it, but we did have a very specific um, sort of ritual prophecy, things that had to happen, for this magic ritual to take place. Certain number of victims, certain sacrifices, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was their motivation. And then, of course, Agent Winslow and the Third Reich were coming in, not to resurrect, the Brotherhood of Thule, but to, further the agenda of the Third Reich. So.
yeah. Okay. So the Brotherhood of Thule, the Raven Room guys with the cigars and all that, are either modeled on or descendants of the pagan knights who actually did the whole thing with the Odin and tried to take his powers from him, resurrect him, and then take his powers away. So you got Joseph Mulhaven, who's the scribe, Lewis Fisher, the man with the bushy beard, the herald. Sergeant at Arms is Hank Finster, although he doesn't know what the hell they're talking to, so he just tells him to go away. And I'm assuming that Landulf, as in the high priest who did the really terrible thing back in ye olden days with the knights there, so Landulf is the progenitor of Eisenstadt. Like Eisenstadt is his descendant.
His descendant, or trying to take that role, perhaps. I wish I could tell you now, like, how intentional that was, whether or not we intended for him literally to be the descendant of Landulf, or whether or not he was, seeking to take that role on to his shoulders. That I don't remember.
Nah.
But certainly, yes, that's the premise, is that he's going to be the big guy.
Oh yeah, and he were they the Raven Room guys? Were they intent on the whole resurrection of Odin and taking his powers and all that, or were they just meeting and chanting a bit and letting having some brandy and stuff like that? Were they actually going to do the thing?
I think probably a bit of both. That there were some that were true believers, and then there were others that were just doing it, for the social connections, for the the potential power, money, contracts, all of that, and maybe didn't necessarily believe it. But I think the core members, and certainly Eisenstadt himself, were true believers.
Right. So when Winslow, spoiler, when Winslow hacks off his head and steals the Dahlia, does that mean Winslow has to like start? Let's just say Eisenstadt was well on his way to his 9 men and women sacrifices and the 3 trinkets. He already had the Dahlia, and then he needed the skull and the chalice, or the 3 trinkets. So let's just say he was like halfway done, or there were 8 victims in the Cleveland area before he drops dead. So he was real close to his 9 victims. So then Winslow steals the gem, offs him as probably the first second. So he has to start all over, or what?
Yeah. So I think the premise was that at the time he was a believer, and certainly Winslow, ends up being a person with a high degree of power, both in terms of political connections, spy connections, but also with the supernatural element. But I think he was still doing the bidding of others, like Heinrich Himmler, maybe directly up to Adolf. But he was still a foot soldier in the end, and so he was getting it so that he could take it back to Germany. And then, the sequence that happens later, the post-war sequence, was like, I handed you this power, you did nothing with it.
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And he, at that point, is, a true zealot looking to claim it for himself.
Yeah. So was he a double agent from the start, like right
Yes.
from the start?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Wow. He's a real good actor. You got to hand that to him. So
Yeah, no, David,
oh, I
he
just meant the character in general, but
oh,
yeah,
yes.
David, absolutely. David, absolutely. Yeah.
Both from the, the character concept to David, the way he pulled it off. Um, but yeah, no, we certainly, when we were developing the story and writing it, we knew that Winslow was the bad guy all along.
Yeah, and he was also like the second he got. Oh, here's another like tiny little question. So Marillo describes him as a junior agent of the FBI, and it seems odd to hand a prolific case like the Torso Killers to a junior agent. Is that just Marillo like
I
throwing
think it's
shade?
more Marillo sort of, like he wasn't Elliot Ness, so therefore he's like a junior agent. But
All
I,
right.
I think he had the pull, and I think what we were trying to suggest there, with some of his like the Yale football sort of
Yeah.
puzzle clue, is that he may not have had a lot of field experience, but he had a lot of political connections in terms of family, Yale buddies, but also all the way up through, the German Third Reich government as well.
Hmm.
So junior, he wasn't junior in the sense that the Jim Pearson character was, who was really green when he walks through the door. Um, but yeah, he wasn't, you know, he was the agent in charge of the Cleveland field office. He wasn't a guy that was like, had 20, 30 years of solving crime under his belt like Marillo was. So
No.
that's
All
the
right.
dismissive junior agent.
I get it. Oh, and is he like of German descent, or did he just get like sideswiped by Himmler and drawn to the dark side, as it were? Just
That's a great question. I would probably, I don't know how much we fleshed out his backstory. And if we did, I honestly can't remember
oh,
that
that's fine.
much of it.
Just
But my take on it is that um, he was a sleeper agent from the get-go, that
yeah,
Winslow isn't his real name. Um, you know,
yeah. 'Cause that happened a lot back in those days. Certainly. I mean, they built a whole agency to keep track of this sort of thing. So yeah. All right. So I suppose. Oh, so he hands over the Dahlia to Hitler at the end and expects him to use it to take on the world, and then Hitler just buries it behind three logic puzzles,
as one does, yes.
as one does. Why did he just stick it in there? Because the lore was that Hitler and the Third Reich, the top echelon, were really into the whole supernatural business, and tons of fiction has been written about them resurrecting this, that, or the other. You would think that if someone actually hands him a magical gem that will give him the ultimate power, he'd be like, "That's interesting," and instead
So
he just buries it.
my take it on it. Well, two things that I would say about that. One is, I think we were influenced in part by Raiders of the Lost Ark, and clearly,
No.
clearly that sequel, but that sequence in the middle obviously was a riff on that, but also just the idea of the way that movie ends with the Holy Grail just like buried in a warehouse full of other random things, um, is sort of like what we ascribed that the Nazis did with it, right? They were collecting all of these supernatural items with the idea of using them to further their glory, but they just end up buried somewhere. They don't
Mm.
actually, get fulfilled or get put to work.
It's one of those. I'll have a look at that later. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and then my other take on it is that it was pretty well documented that they were obsessed with the occult, and so they were collecting things, but they thought other avenues of occult sort of mysticism would lead them to power, and the Black Dahlia was just sort of like, yeah, we'll get to that.
Right. So Winslow's off. He's got the Black Dahlia. We can safely assume that Eisenstadt is his first on his list of 9 men and women, which I'm actually not entirely clear. The 9 men and women sacrifice, does that mean you have to sacrifice 9 people and you should probably split them equally, or do you have to like 9 times 2?
Oh,
That's a lot of corpses.
no, I think 9 total.
9 total.
I don't know that they need to be divided up in a specific way. Just 9 total.
9 total. Okay,
And
so we
I,
got.
yeah, and I believe I may be mistaken, but I thought I caught a reference in Jim Pearson's voiceover that there were some bodies turning up in Austria, or
That's
so
yes.
that there were some victims already besides after Eisenstadt, that there were some I don't know the number, if we were already up to number 7, 8, or whatever at the time, but he started that corpse count all over again.
Yes, yeah, and that was the light bulb that went off in my head when we were talking here, because I was like wondering, like, did he carry on with Eisenstadt? No, he has to start over, and that also I was going to bring up that voiceover with the Austrian, where bodies have been turning up. That must be Winslow going around with his machete or whatever, and hacking and adding up to the body counts, because
Yeah.
he had to start over. So I'm a little clearer on that now. So I can just tick that off, actually. But once Winslow gets to LA, obviously he knows that Elizabeth Short has the Dahlia, and so he hacks her to pieces. Now, was she on the list, or was she just a fun little side project?
I would say a fun little side project.
Because he's gone mental at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there was, the connection that Maddie, Matt Collins, her doomed boyfriend, sent the gem back, and that it wasn't completely random, but it was more, Winslow just going off the deep end at that point. Just wrong person, wrong place, wrong connection to the Dahlia.
Yeah, but he also I didn't even realize this until he just mentioned it, but Matt Collins's plane goes down. It's like a decorated war hero, and he gets on a training mission, and all of a sudden the thing nosedives, and Pearson describes that as suspicious circumstances later. Did Winslow run in there with a screwdriver and just take this thing apart before he went in? Did he actually do that? Or is it meant to be like the Black Dahlia, supernaturally just craves blood, destroys everything?
Oh, that's good. I think I was thinking that Winslow actually, did something to torpedo his like literally, but I kind of like the mystical explanation a little bit better there, Charles. So let's roll with that one.
Thank you. Oh, right, yeah. Because it's explained somewhere in the Penske files. He has these rambling notes that the thing drinks blood, or it craves blood,
Yeah.
and at the end, when Winslow's holding it, it sucks up all the blood into it.
Yeah.
Which must have been a fun effect, by the way. So I was thinking that okay, this thing is probably a bit hungry after this point. Maybe it wants a little snack, so it has a fighter pilot for lunch. I don't know.
One fun little tidbit that I want to mention there, you just reminded me of it. So the other thing, besides obviously things like Raiders of the Lost Ark, we were big Seinfeld fans, and so George Costanza has this whole bit in one of the episodes where he's looking for the Penske files.
Oh, yeah.
So we deliberately named the character Walter Penske so that we could bring up the reference to the Penske files in the game.
What? That reminds me of something that I completely glossed over in one of the train schedules.
Art
The list,
Vandelay?
Art Vandelay's in there.
Yep, another one of them. One of our
God.
Seinfeld references that we squeezed in.
Ah, I see. Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of Seinfeld myself, so I completely forgot about the Penske files, but who can forget Art Vandelay? Famous architect.
Yes.
All right. So we've got Elizabeth. We've got all the killings in Austria. Let's just assume that Winslow is up to 8 of his 9 victims. Is Alice number 9?
That is an excellent question.
Maybe I should have reverse the order of these questions.
No, that is an excellent question because trying to remember the clue that he left was the ninth victim has been chosen, right?
Yes.
And certainly would seem like Alice is number 9. And I'm trying to remember the ritual itself because I know there is a logic to it. There's someone has to bear witness. There's someone that has to like relieve him of his burdens. There's a whole ritualistic object to what happens and why he sort of like gives the illusion of being Alice and then transforms into Winslow after Pearson releases him from his bonds.
Oh
And
yeah. I know what you mean. Like but I can't remember. 9 victims in total, and then a person who is innocent and branded
mhm,
has to bear witness to this thing so that Odin's spirit can possess his body,
yeah.
which turns out to be Pearson. So either see what I'm unclear is if that innocent branded person has to be one of the 9, in which case Winslow has misdirected Pearson, saying, "Okay, Alice is going to be the one," when in reality it's him, or if it has to be a separate person other than the 9, so it has to be a 10th dude there. I honestly don't remember. I should have looked more into that. I
that
think
that may be a little bit lost to time. If you do talk to Steve, you could ask him about that.
I could
Be-
just play the game and read
yeah,
what's actually in this.
but I think from what I remember, the Alice was number 9. Darren or Jim Pearson was fulfilling the role of the witness,
Yes.
and that having someone witness all of this, and Winslow ripping out his eye would release and absorb the power of Odin.
Yes.
And then once he had that, Pearson could be number 10. Like
Yeah.
you could go on, beyond
It's
that, you don't need, you stop counting after that.
yeah. Well, at that point, you're already Odin. You might as well
Yeah.
go nuts.
Yeah.
Um,
But
just
yeah,
go.
so like thinking it through, talking it through, yeah, I would say Alice was number 9.
Alice is number 9. Okay, and then Pearson is the innocent witness with the
Yeah.
branding on his hand. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's just go back to Alice for a moment. Who is she? Is she intentionally following Pearson around, or is that just a complete coincidence from the train onwards?
So I think it's meant to be a coincidence that, it's just like here is someone that he randomly meets on the train, and there are a lot of coincidences.
Yeah, because
That's a good question. When I was rewatching it, I was definitely going along with the idea um, that it was just completely coincidental. The two of them met up, had a little spark, and then coincidentally are staying in the same hotel. But like looking back on it now, um, you know, it, this is the problem with like looking back on things, from 25 years ago. But I would say probably like she was already Winslow's puppet by the time that she met Pearson on the train.
I mean, they did share sleeper compartments, and at that point, Winslow is really just pulling on the string,
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
Pearson there. Um,
And that's not
yeah,
to say that she was a double agent or something like that. I think the thought process was that her character was just under the mind control influence of the charming Agent Winslow.
fair enough. Oh, he is very charming. Um, but it does. I mean, by the end of it, is she completely hypnotized? She pulls the gun and goes, "Look me up, Jim." Like there's
Yeah.
absolutely blank in there. Is she completely hypnotized by
Yeah.
Winslow at this point, and that's why she turns the gun on herself?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if she's the ninth victim, obviously that makes sense. If she wasn't, then my big question would be, why the hell did she just do that? Was it like extra motivation to get Pearson to follow Winslow? Because I think he was going to do that already at that point. But if she's the ninth victim, that makes sense.
Yeah, the ninth victim, and Winslow is playing some pretty serious mind games with Pearson at this point, and so having this person that he obviously has a fondness for just shoot herself right in front of him, like he's doing this, it's much more than cat and mouse at this point. It's some very sadistic mind games that Winslow is playing with Pearson.
Yeah, David described it as Winslow is just the ultimate dominating type, so he'll just do anything to fuck with you, basically.
Yeah.
But see, I'm learning a lot about the story from talking to you now. Like, I had my own headcanon that I wrote down, and now I'm trying to reorganize that on the fly here. So that absolutely, now Alice sort of makes sense, except for one bit. When Pearson goes down into the dungeon, which, by the way, Al King's contractors must have looked at the floor plan and what the hell? Well, once he goes in there, nice bit of setup, lovely lighting, all that stuff, maybe a little dusty. Alice is hanging there, and we don't know that yet, but she is actually Winslow in disguise. And I'm Scandinavian. I know this. Odin was a shapeshifter. Yay. I had to look that up. Sorry, I don't know. Anyway. But yeah, Odin was a shapeshifter. So I guess him morphing into Alice and back again is a reference to Odin's being a shapeshifter, but he doesn't have the power of Odin yet at that point. So how can he do the whole Shang Tsung thing?
Well, I think what I would suggest is that when you think about the opening sequences with the Cleveland torso killer, there's a lot of sort of illusions and mind games and stuff like that going on. So it's really indicating Winslow's level of control over the Dahlia and how he can mess with people's minds already through that supernatural.
Dad, why did I not see that? That's like, because by then the trippy daydreams are sort of a lost memory, really. But yeah, okay, so basically just having the Dahlia. The whole thing with, if you have a totem of someone, you can start to mess with their heads and minds and dreams and all that stuff. Yeah, well, obviously that's it. I'm sorry, that's actually a stupid question now that I think about it.
There are no stupid questions.
Oh, well, so in the ritual order, he's got the skull, he's got the chalice, sorry, accents, drinks from the well of dry ice, which I suspect is a reference to the well of Mimir, which, and then he plucks his eye out. In the Norse lore, the whole plucking out the eye was payment for being allowed to drink from the well of Mimir, the whole ultimate knowledge kind of thing. There's kind of reverse order. So he drinks first, then he plucks his eye out. He could have just left his eye in, I suppose. Was that really necessary at that point?
But it was so cool, right?
Oh yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I offer no other explanation other than that's the sequence that we came up with.
What else do you need, really? My headcanon on that one is that the whole thing is symbolic more than anything. He's not really drinking from the well of Mimir. Which does beg the question, though, because there's the whole bit in Austria under the monastery where you go into this nice, very brightly lit throne room, and it's described in the FMV with the dude with the gravelly voice and the loud choir in the background. Is described as, this was the throne room where they tried to do the whole Odin thing and fucked it all up, and just never do that again. Just throw the Dahlia into space. We don't want it anymore. That was the throne room where they were supposed to be doing this stuff, but Winslow does it in this, I call it the pool room. It's got a lovely little spa thing going on in there. But why does he do it in there?
The grotto for some reason.
The grotto, that's also good. Yeah.
I think because it was in LA, we called it the grotto.
Well, it's just sort of a mystical. He first sees it when he goes in and tosses the stones in the pool. So that's why I call it the pool room. Why does he do it in there? What's so special about that area? Why didn't he just go to Austria and do the thing?
Um, I think expedience. So he had to go to LA to track down the gem in the first place.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm here. I'm just gonna Pearson's here, my little plaything. I don't want to have to sort of like pull him along all the way back to Austria. Let's just do it now. I want the power now.
Yeah.
Kind of a
And
rational.
he's already got the slicey dagger, so he could just hop into Dimension X whenever he wants.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right, we're almost through. I only have two more.
Okay.
So
Go
we're
for it.
almost there. The happy ending to the game is to defeat Winslow but get hauled off to the electric chair. And the two other endings are even worse. Was there any discussion about maybe having a slightly more happy ending, or was it just like, we're going to end on this note?
It's Chinatown.
Fair answer. Fair.
No,
No pressure from it.
it was deliberate. It was deliberate. Like I said, we were really, or I was anyways, really steeped into that film noir sort of era kind of storytelling. And, a lot of the game, although there was, quite a heavy, sort of occult supernatural component to it, a lot of the storytelling, really was inspired by the film noir movies and books of that era or set in that era. And so, yeah, the downer ending, it was our little Chinatown ending,
Yeah, I mean, from a narrative perspective, from a story perspective, I love it. A good downer ending, when done right, is always nice. But from a player's perspective, I just went through 8 CDs of this shit, and you're gonna haul me off to the electric chair.
Yeah, but those puzzles were so darn masochistic. So why wouldn't you want a masochistic ending?
Good counter argument. I will take that. Okay, I have one last question, and it is a complete fluff question.
Sure.
We've done the hard stuff now. You say you had Seinfeld references, obviously a bit of Raiders of the Lost Ark influences. There's a diner in LA called Gabe's Diner. The dude who owns it, obviously Gabe, his server or cook or whatever is named Grace. Gabe and Grace. Is this a direct reference to the Gabriel Knight series?
Will you be disappointed if I say no?
No, absolutely
Okay.
not. I'm just because it's online. People are saying
No.
Easter eggs. Get Black Dahlia references.
I know because I'm a fan of that game as well, and I believe you are too. But no, I don't think that was a reference to them. I don't honestly remember how we came up with those names. There's a chance that it was, but I think that was probably just more coincidental.
All right, fair enough. It is a nice coincidence, though. I like it.
Yeah.
So okay, now I'm just freestyling. But now that I have you, what's your favorite puzzle in the game? Is there such a thing?
No, there's not. Mostly just because it's been so long since I've played the game, and I haven't actually played like I had the joy of rewatching the FMV sequences thanks to that cut that you put together. And believe me, a lot of that was like, oh yeah, I remember that now. But I did not get to to replay the puzzles for better or worse.
We're skirting around the word "suffer through," aren't we? No, I'm just
Maybe
kidding.
I'm
That's
probably being a
unfair.
little too harsh on the game. I'm sure there are puzzles that I enjoyed. I think a lot of them have this sort of like Rubik's Cube element, and if you're a Rubik's Cube kind of guy, or girl or whatever, kind of person, then some of those puzzles where you're flipping around the gem and trying to get everything to line up are probably fun.
Yeah, I will backtrack my own inflammatory statement and say that the reason why I think the puzzles are so difficult is because I'm not good with logic puzzles. They actually kind of make me feel a bit stupid. I'm more of the pick shit up, put it somewhere else kind of person. So yeah, I've never solved a Rubik's Cube in my life. And some people will look at these puzzles, they will play Myst and Seventh Guest and be like, this is my jam. I
Yeah.
love this. And Black Dahlia will certainly give them run for their money. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here decoding phone numbers and getting stuck on the first puzzle of the game. So yeah, it's not a knock on the puzzle design per se. It's just
Yeah. But honestly, it has been so long since I've played any of the puzzles that I couldn't tell you a favorite or a least favorite for that matter. When I was looking at various walkthroughs and so forth, sort of like jogged my memory. Oh yeah, the stained glass puzzle. I remember this one now. That's one that stands out to me for whatever reason. But there aren't any that I can recall that I'm like, oh, I hated that one, or oh wow, I really love that one. That was fun.
I will give the puzzle design credit for only having one sliding tile puzzle. They are usually the worst. There's a lovely example of a really bad sliding tile puzzle in the game 11th Hour, which is the sequel to Seventh Guest. There's a sliding tile puzzle, and all the pieces are randomized when it initializes. But due to either some programming oversight or just complete sadism, the puzzle will start in an unsolvable configuration 50% of the time. Ow. At least you didn't do that.
Yeah. But hopefully you'll be able to arrange for that interview with Steve. And
yeah,
he had a much larger part in the puzzle design. His background, I believe, was initially through the Q&A testing of those games. And I imagine did a lot of Q&A testing on Ripper before he moved into sort of like a lead design capacity with Black Dahlia. So he probably would have a lot more to say about the puzzle design itself. For me, I enjoy adventure games. I played, I think I mentioned, a lot of games like LucasArts, especially, were the ones that were my favorites at the time. I think I played all of those. But I played Myst. I played Seventh Guest. Played Gabriel Knight, and I think a lot of the ones that had the like Myst, I remember had some really confounding puzzles. I don't know that I have a tremendous amount of patience for working it out myself. So I'm like, I will try it first myself, but if it's just a little too much, I will happily turn to a walkthrough or guide or cheat code or whatever it takes to move on.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I'm not going to belabor the whole puzzle thing. It's if you look at the end of the executable in Black Dahlia, all the cheat codes are in standard text. So I'm glad the cheat codes were available. So, well, I'm really just occupying your time at this point. So
no, it's been great. I will say, Trolls is like, this has been feels like it's been a gift. Because Black Dahlia was, I think, one of the highlights of certainly of my career in games. One of the creative achievements I'm most proud of. The film shoot, the 8-week shoot in Pittsburgh, working with people like Eric Trow and Darren Elliker, and then the people that I worked with at the development office in Latrobe with, like, it was wonderful. It was a great experience. It was a great time. And, sadly, with, a game from the 90s, it's difficult to get it to operate on any kind of modern computer gaming system. So having you be able to put all of my work, cut it together into a 4-hour movie, it's a gift. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, Black Dahlia unfortunately came out around that time. I call it the dark ages of gaming because, we can emulate DOS. We can emulate every system made before DOS, but that middle bit with Windows 95 up to a certain point, like mid-2000s, is just almost impossible to emulate unless you've got virtual machines and stuff like that. So yeah. Black Dahlia came out just slightly. Maybe that's why there's so many Ripper retrospectives and not a lot of Black Dahlia retrospectives, because Ripper you can run in
There will
DOSBox.
be.
Black Dahlia requires black magic. But
Yeah.
I'm very glad you appreciate this. I'll send you the retrospective game video script so you can see just how thankful you are after reading that. But I'm gentle, I promise.
Yeah, and you know, I appreciate you sending me the links to Darren's interviews and David's interview as well. It was nice seeing and hearing those guys talk about it. You know,
Yeah,
remember them both very fondly, very well. So yeah.
And I'll send you when because Steve and Henry and Eric are on board as well. We're just a couple of weeks out.
Yeah.
Henry's sick. Steve's busy. Eric is riding a motorcycle in Spain. So
yeah, no, what a life, huh?
I know. and so now I got to find some stuff to occupy. Feed the algorithm some other stuff in the meantime. And I got this mountain of Black Dahlia stuff ready to go, and
yeah,
it's going to be fun. But hey, listen, thank you so very, very much. This whole thing just came out of, I want to do a Black Dahlia video. I'm going to play through the game. I haven't played it since I was 18 years old. Let's do it again. Go through the entire game. And I go, I have a lot of questions. And before I start ranting like a madman in a video script, why don't I just ask the guy who wrote it? Go to Moby Games, find out, okay, screenplay by one guy. Okay, maybe I can track him down. Turns out I can't. Some unlucky bastard on Blue Sky actually tracked you down. Thank you to that. It was like, I know a lot of people in the adventure game community, past and present, LucasArts, Sierra, all that stuff. Nobody at Take-Two. I have no contacts at Take-Two whatsoever. So I just randomly tweeted out, I was going to say, posted on Blue Sky. Does anyone, I know this is a long shot, does anyone know how I can get in touch with Patrick Freeman? He wrote a game called Black Dahlia for Take-Two Interactive in 1998. And someone replied, I'm good at this sort of stuff. First red flag.
Yeah, should I be worried?
Maybe just a little, but no, it turns out it was and then I very sort of trepidatiously went, are you the Patrick Freeman who, yes. So this all began, this whole retrospective endeavor of interviewing everyone and such all comes back to me just wanting to ask you a few questions to this interview, technically. So thank you very much for getting the whole buzz going, putting me in touch with all of these people and stuff like that.
You're welcome. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. As you can tell, I ramble a lot when I don't have a script. So
no worries.
All right. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
You're not Penske material.
Really?